What is up, Green Bay Packers fans, and welcome to not only another episode of the Daily Draft brought to you by Badger State Brewing in Green Bay, but happy new defensive coordinator day. This is not that post. If you're looking for that, a VIP post up at Packer Report later for our VIPs, really breaking down what makes Jeff Hafley Jeff Hafley, as well as Andy at some point here has 20 minutes with me and the 24/7 sports publisher of the Boston College site, AJ Black. That was a really good conversation about Coach Hafley and kind of what he's about, why things might not have worked out exactly the way he wanted in Boston College, but what makes him probably a better coordinator than a head coach, and that happens sometimes. So, but we will not dive too deeply into that. Today is about tight end Ja'Tavion Sanders from Texas, a very, very exciting prospect, somebody in my top 40, a player I really, really like, but it's kind of a luxury and not something I would necessarily expect the Packers to do. Still fun to talk about and a fun prospect to break down. As I mentioned, Sanders is a tight end from Texas, dominant player. Dominant player over the last 2 years. Both of the last 2 years, Ja'Tavion has had 45 or more catches and 600 or more yards in that Texas offense, working with Quinn Ewers. And he is a plus athlete on film. I mean, I'm very excited to see him test, and I'm going to say that a lot just because you kind of want to know things. You want as much information as possible, but on film, he looks explosive. He looks like a better athlete than guys trying to tackle him. And he's a yak monster. I love watching him with the ball in his hands. It's very fun when Texas gets it out to him, and you could sort of imagine him on some of that split zone play action stuff where they flip it out to Kraft. And look, Tucker Kraft is awesome at that. Okay. He does a great job, knocking people down, stiff arming, making people miss occasionally. But Ja'Tavion is probably even another level in the open field. I mean, Tucker's very, very good, but Ja'Tavion could potentially be something special. One thing about Ja'Tavion Sanders, too, and the Packers love this, he's 20 years old. So this young man dominated the Big 12. And I'm like, hand up, I understand. The Big 12 is not known for their defense. Okay, I understand that fully, and that's always taken into account, frankly, when evaluating Big 12 prospects. Is they don't play a ton of defense in that league, but he dominated that league as a 19-year-old, and then turned around and dominated that league as a 20-year-old. That is super exciting to me. He's a good enough blocker, okay, for his size and his age. A 20-year-old who's, as I said, 6'4", I believe Texas lists him here at 6'4", 256. So not an enormous tight end, not a tiny guy, but not an enormous tight end. And for him to block as well as he does, which I would say he's an average, like right on average. Not great, not terrible. I mean, there have been decent to good blocking tight ends in the league that their college scouting report was can't block, doesn't want to block, won't block. He will. I mean, he does. He blocks. He's not Mercedes Lewis. Okay. He's not, people felt so in love with Tommy Tremble from Notre Dame, who was a shorter tight end who blocked his butt off. That is not Ja'Tavion Sanders, but it is good enough. And that's a big plus. Okay. You have a 6'4", 255 tight end who, is occasionally in the slot, is occasionally split out, super athlete. You're thinking like, that's probably a me guy. That's not a team guy. Probably a guy that, is focused on his receiving skills, not really trying to get dirty, gets plenty dirty, not elite, not great, plenty dirty. He can line up all over. I mentioned that he has lined up all over. Texas will use him in the they have split him out wide. He can be in line. I think in the pros, he could potentially play a little fullback, and we'll talk about that when we get to the Packers pick or the Packers fit, But Ja'Tavion is a player that Texas sort of used as a Swiss Army knife and would just be, again, a super luxury for Green Bay. But you think about the ways that they used Josiah DeGuara, and it starts to get very exciting, very interesting. He would be a very, very much a matchup nightmare, especially I think in year 3, year 4. And I know that might be frustrating for Packers fans to think about just because Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave were so productive right away. Ja'Tavion's 20 years old, but I think in year 2, year 3, year 4, man, he could be just impossible to match up with. Also 0 drops in 2023, and they threw it at him 67 times. Does not drop the ball. That's a big deal. I tend to not worry so much about drops. Obviously, I've been high, on Christian Watson. People have accused Christian of dropping the ball, and he certainly has. But Jordy Nelson dropped the ball. James Jones dropped the ball. There have been plenty of Devontae Adams had a terrible case of the drops. Guys get over it, and some guys don't. But it's also something where I'm just not going to knock a guy that much for dropping the ball. Professional receivers can usually catch, and eventually, you just watch Marquez Valdez-Scantling make an amazing catch to send the Chiefs to the Super Bowl, and he can't catch. I don't worry about it. If a guy with terrible drops will maybe drop 9 balls in a season, and a guy who's really good will drop 3. Are those 6 plays going to move me off of a player? No, they're not. And not everybody agrees with that, but drops are just not, a key for me. 0 drops in a whole season, I'm going to pay attention to that. I'm going to give you a little plus in the scouting column there for that. Cons, is he a tweener? There have been guys, and look, the shorter tight end stuff, Jonnu Smith, like we've seen Delaney Walker, we've seen guys work. Okay. Plenty of tight ends have worked, if you will, at a tight end who are a little shorter. I'm just going to real quick see, like, I know this is great, especially for you guys on the, Mark Andrews, 6'5", 247. So he's an inch, he's an inch taller, but he's lighter, and it's not like they only line up Mark Andrews at wide receiver. That's not how they play football. These guys have worked in the past before, but what if he's not? What if he's just sort of a big wide receiver? And what if he can't get open against defensive backs? I'm not sure that that's the case. But if you're going to try and kind of break down, again, this guy's in my top 40. So I'm very positive on this guy. But if you're going to try and kind of cut him down, break him down to how things could go badly in the league, what if he never really finds a role, never really finds a position? Frankly, guys, I've had the same conversation about Brock Bowers, who we're not going to do because Brock Bowers just probably isn't going to be available anytime the Packers are picking. But Bowers is, I think even potentially smaller. Again, a great pause there. 6'4", 240 for Brock Bowers. So Jatavion is the height of Brock Bowers, add 15 pounds. What if Brock Bowers just ends up being a big wide receiver? And I think he'll win at the NFL level. I mean, I have a blue chip grade on Brock Bowers. So please understand I love him too. But kind of how do you use Brock Bowers? Because Brock and Jatavion are not going to beat George Kittle. Okay. They're not going to line up next to your right tackle and just move defensive ends. In my opinion, I don't think that's going to happen. So we'll see. Can he get stronger and better as a run blocker is interesting to me, especially if you're going to have him use his leverage, if you're going to have him, do some wham blocks on split zone. Are you going to line him up at fullback a little bit? Are you going to have him lead toss? Are you going to, what are you going to have him do from a run blocking standpoint? And as I said, he is just average. It's not elite. I wouldn't even give it a plus, but the fact that it's not terrible is good for a guy that's as awesome at receiving the ball as Jatavion is. Can he play fullback? Can he do some of that? Can he be a Kyle Juszczyk? And I think that's a big ask, but does he have that versatility? That's not on film. Can he run block DNs at 6'4"? That does limit kind of how you can use him, because let's say something bad happens to Luke Musgrave again. Could you just plug Jatavion Sanders in there at wide tight end? I don't know if you can. And that does decrease his value. I mean, if he could do all of that, he might be tight end 1, although Bowers is a pretty special player. But I mean, he might have a solid round 1 grade from more evaluators. And right now, I'm not seeing that. So, can he run block DNs? The other thing, and this is always the case, we just saw it with Xavier Legette, who I kind of knocked down my board and wondered how he might win. They listed, or South Carolina listed Legette at 6'3", 230. He's 6'1", 222. There's a difference there, guys. So if Texas is listing Jatavion at 6'4", 256, he comes back and he's 6'2" 3/4 and 248. Now it's different. It's not disqualifying, but it's different. So anytime with these shorter tight ends, I wonder, like, are the sports information people at the school being honest? So that's something to pay attention to. I mean, if he gets to the combine, because I don't think he's probably too young to be at an all-star game, or isn't at an all-star game to my knowledge. Let me know if I'm wrong. But I'm interested to see that. I'm hoping for 6'3" 3/4, 6'3", 7/8, 6'4", 6'0", 4'0". That would be good. That would be helpful. for him as a prospect and to kind of keep him at the tier that I have him at. As far as the Packers fit, I think it's obvious. You give him every snap that Josiah DeGuara has taken for the last however many years he's been a Packer, and maybe bump that up 10%, maybe bump it up 20% in year 3 and year 4. And no, he's not probably going to be a 60 snap a game player, but if he gives you 30 really good dynamic snaps, now, is that worth what I think it would take, which would be pick 41? I don't know. That would really be viewing pick 41, that Jets pick, as something extra, and we just can't pass up this idea. We can't pass up this player. I think that would be like the Oscar, right? That wonderful steak Oscar, the clam or the lobster, whatever they put on top of a steak. It's not the steak, that's the sizzle. These are the trimmings. Okay, folks, these are the bacon Brussels sprouts. This is the maybe even the like apple dessert at the end of your steak dinner. Jatavion is probably for the Packers not steak. It's not something, certainly not something that they need with Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave, and frankly even Ben Sims kind of already in, and it's like, okay, well, does he play the Henry Pearson role? Is the difference between Jatavion Sanders and Henry Pearson pick 41? I don't know. That's my next question here is, would they seriously spend a top 100 pick on a tight end a year after spending 2? I don't know. Ultimate luxury pick, but I think he could just be absolutely impossible to match up with. I mean, you think of some 13 personnel stuff that they could do, where they could line up with whatever running back, Christian Watson, and the 3 tight ends. I mean, you can split Musgrave out. You can put Musgrave in the slot. You could put Sanders in the backfield. You could put Sanders at H-back. You could put Watson. I mean, Watson's going to play outside in that situation, but you could be running ace formation stuff. You could be running 13, personnel stuff with 3 actual tight ends. You could be in the spread. You could have a 10 personnel look with Musgrave and Sanders and Kraft and Watson, out on these corners, and you could just do so many different things from a personnel standpoint with Jatavion Sanders and the way that he would open up your playbook. Again, I just think it might be a little bit too rich for their blood, a little bit too expensive for their taste. Okay, let's wrap things up here. My grade, he's got a high 2 for me, a high round 2 grade. He is my 38th overall player. And if he blows the combine up, like if he measures at 6'4.25", he's all at 255 pounds, and he's a 9+ RAS guy, he might get a 1 from me. He might get a late 1, just because like positional value would kind of maybe push him down the board a bit. But my goodness, folks, he can be like a dynamic player in this league. I mean, he wins, right? I don't think a safety can really match strength with him. I think he's just going to be too fast for linebackers. If he was 6'6", he'd have a top 15 grade for me. He's not. He's 6'4", so you use him a little bit differently. Player overall, number 38, and round 2 grade for me. Folks, how can you help us out? How can you, show that you appreciate this content besides viewing it, which we do appreciate, or listening to it, which we appreciate as well? Check us out over at Packer Report. Follow me. I'm at Ross Uglem on X, which used to be known as Twitter. Please check out the Green Bay Draft Guide, powered by Packer Report, with the promo code DAILY. That's DAILY, as in Daily Draft. The link should be under this video or in this podcast description. We'll be actually kind of rolling that out and promoting that soon. So you guys have even like a pre-order to the pre-order. And as always, please like and subscribe to the Pack a Day podcast. Have a wonderful day, folks. Go Pack Go.